and I've done grizzly bear den surveys using FLIR to detect heat from a helicopter, which, when I think about it now, was pretty dangerous. Because we actually had to go down to the ground and go look for them.
Yeah.
You don't really want to wake up a denning grizzly bear.
At what point did you ever spot any, or?
No, I don't think we ever found one.
Okay.
But I've been...
Thankfully.
I've been chased by a grizzly bear. I was in the bush with a coworker, and we came around the corner of some trees, and this bear was coming at me full charge.
Yeah.
And I said, grizzly, and she turned and ran. I mean, we all took the... bear awareness training, or they tell you don't run, and she turned and ran, and I said, don't run. But I don't think the bear could see her because she hadn't thankfully come around the corner yet.
Hello and welcome back to the workshop presented by Aplin Martin. Today, I'm very excited to share this episode as I'm joined by two of the women leading the charge for Aplin Martin's newest division, our environmental consultation team. I sat down with Chief Communications Officer Maggie Koka and Senior Project Manager Tracy Anderson to discuss what exactly this division is, how it ties into land development, and how they got to where they are today. It was a great conversation, and I hope you all enjoy.
With Aplin Martin growing and expanding, not only nationally across the country and workforce-wise as well, in the ever-evolving field of land development, it was only natural to begin to break into different disciplines as well. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by two of the women who have been leading the charge of the environmental services team, our CCO, Maggie Koka, and Senior Project Manager, Tracy Anderson. How are you guys?
Excellent. Yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Awesome.
That's very good to hear. So I guess we'll begin with a brief background about yourselves. How long you've been in the industry, amount of years in Aplin, where did you grow up?
So I grew up on Vancouver Island. I've lived in a variety of different locations. I actually went to 7 different elementary schools, so moved around a ton. Was raised by a single mom who was working in the construction industry, and so that probably is where I've got a bit of my background. I've been in the industry. In fact, my background was in GIS, so my education and where I sort of started my working life was in GIS work, and came to Aplin Martin in the urban planning realm at the same time that I started, and so I've been in the industry for about 20 years now.
Okay, and that's very interesting that you said your mom was as well part of the construction industry. So I guess you picked up a lot of, the background construction-wise and sort of the development portion of that from her as well? Like any tips and tricks from there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that she wasn't in land development at all, but they did heavy construction. So things like built the Canby Bridge, built coal docks in Prince Rupert. But working on construction camps, seeing things happen is definitely what I picked up from her. I love implementation and seeing things get built, and I definitely got that from her growing up.
And as you got older and you kind of started getting into the industry as well, did you find yourself going back to her for pieces of advice, talking about different projects and like stuff like that as well?
Definitely, we have dinner table conversations around what I'm doing and how it is, but it's because I'm on the urban planning side, I deal with much more of the regulatory approvals, not the actual putting the shovels in the ground. So there is some distinctions there.
Very cool. Tracy, can you give a brief background about yourself, position, how long you've been in the industry, and how long you've been with Aplin as well?
I've been in the industry, I have to do some math, but probably since I graduated university, which would have been in 1996. Kind of jumped right into it doing, I worked for one of the First Nations on the Central Coast doing scuba dive surveys for monitoring the commercial invertebrate fisheries. So we would do density surveys underwater doing scuba. So it was pretty cool. And then after that, I went to BCIT and did their fish and wildlife program there, and then started working for an environmental consulting company right out of school. And actually I was thinking the other day, because that job is very similar to my start at Aplin Martin. That was for a company, it was a geotechnical company that wanted to start an environmental division. So I was hired as a junior at the time by the person that is basically in my role now. So I kind of just thought about that the other day on how similar, you know, my first job
Is now it's almost come like a full circle moment kind of
starting
yeah.
starting an environmental team at another company.
I don't know if this is a dumb question for that or not, but were you actually diving in the water yourself or
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
I know. I got my scuba certification just to go up there and do that job. I never dove before in my life.
Okay.
And it was amazing. Like, so awesome.
Have you only done then the scuba diving kind of here in the Vancouver area, or do you also do
Well,
it now on?
No, I've never done it since.
Okay, that's why I was like, is it a thing where you go on vacation? You're like,
I've never
I don't
done
want to do it because now it's for.
No.
I like to get paid to do it.
Yeah, and this was up on
someone
the
else to do
Central
it.
Coast, so I think the diving was a little bit better because, like, I did my certification diving, like local White Cliff Park and stuff like that. But
Okay.
up on the coastal waters, like farther north, it's a lot clearer, and yeah, it was amazing.
Okay, very cool. So I guess we'll get to the actual topic now itself, environmental services. I don't know who wants to start, but if you guys want to just take it away from here and give me kind of a high-level background of what that is and what this new world is as part of the Aplin Martin family.
Sure. I'll sort of take it away as an why is it that Aplin Martin decided to add environmental services to our portfolio of consulting. So in the urban planning realm, regulatory approvals have a variety of sub-consultants. And just about every one of the projects that we were touching, we needed to hire an environmental consultant to go out and certify whether there was something there or not there in many cases. And so we just saw an opportunity to provide more of a one-stop shop for our clients and provide that services for them. A sort of a funny aside is, you know, I was always leading these approval processes, and I've had a lot of exposure to the environmental side of it. I've followed a lot of environmental consultants around in the bush as they tried to do assessments. And
so you're right in the field then.
Get right into the field.
It's not the same if you're not.
I actually really appreciate the environmental consultants because they usually come with machetes and cut a path for you.
Okay.
And make it a little easier to walk through.
That's why I like going
Chivalry.
with the surveyors because they do the machete work.
Yeah.
But I would sit down with the regulatory staff and they would be like, I'm sorry, we don't believe you. You're just a planner. We need an actual RP bio to be involved. And so I was very excited when we decided we wanted to go down this realm and have environmental services added, because then I could bring Tracy along to these meetings and be able to say, no, but she's an RP bio.
And you point at her and you give her all the tough questions.
Exactly.
Tracy, do you have anything to add to that as well? If you want to start getting into your role and as part of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Aplin and Martin previous to actually starting this role as my role working for other environmental consulting companies. So pretty much doing the same thing that I'm doing here, except for starting from scratch. So.
Okay, very cool. And then you talked about kind of how, or I guess about the why. And it was more so, like you said, about collaborative process, and we kind of already have all of that in-house here. So it'd be nice to kind of, like you said, one-stop shop, being able to collaborate, I guess, with everybody that we have in the office as well. Do you find that that's obviously a plus as part of the project?
Totally. So, environmental input to the planning process is critical. It's one of the key items in any land use planning decisions. And to be able to sit around a table with that person and say, what about this? Can we do this? Can we apply it in this way? Just allows the overall approval process to be stronger.
Yeah. Anything to add, Tracy?
Well, that's one of the things that attracted me to coming to work for Aplin and Martin, is having that multidisciplinary team in-house.
Yeah.
So that's been one of the things that I enjoy most about working for this company.
Awesome. And then you said you were part of an environmental team previously. Is there anything you took from that experience to our team here now at Aplin?
Well, I've worked for a few different companies before coming to Aplin Martin, and I've learned everything that I know basically in the last 20 some odd years working for those companies. So.
Okay, very cool. And I guess a little bit more background into the environmental services, but how long has this kind of been in the works for Aplin now?
Oh,
Like at what point was the tipping for either of you where you're like, we need this now? Or not so need this, but we'd like to introduce it and implement it and offer it as part of an add-on to already what we do here.
So I think we probably started thinking about it back in 2015, 2017.
Also a while ago now.
A long time
Yeah.
ago. One of the things that we offer in a one-stop shop is to be able to push around the various inputs that's required to get through the timeline. And environmental consulting was becoming a bit of a bottleneck for us. It wasn't the only bottleneck, arborists are also a bit of a bottleneck because they were so inundated with work. And so the ability for us to prioritize projects was a key driver, as well as that one-stop shop perspective.
As the new team kind of came about, and the new division here as well, what sort of general challenges would you say there have been breaking into this new division with the new constantly growing team that we have here?
I think any new business venture always is the brand awareness. Aplin Martin is really well known for our engineering services, and helping the clients in the industry understand that we have more than just engineering services is one of the key pieces. I think also there's been some growing pains of, having a set of staff that have particular needs and figuring out how to really be able to provide them with the foundation to successfully get through their day.
Yeah.
Little things like water meters. We're like, well, I don't know if I got a water meter. Let me go ask the surveyors.
Yeah. But being able to actually go back and use kind of the team that we have already put together and the expertise that we already have in-house, that could contribute to your knowledge as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it contributes to the knowledge, but I think that every industry has its uniquenesses, its own characteristics. There's definitely been some growing pains as we start to understand how to really provide good, solid environmental services. But we're getting there. It's going well.
And then is there a lesson that you would say you've kind of learned from these challenges in the recent years, I guess, creating this team and now contributing solid services to the clients, environmentally speaking specifically?
I think it's really just getting the word out there.
Okay.
We've got a great brand as a company, and helping people understand that, yes, there is environmental services, and really that's getting our people internally talking to all of their clients externally about, this is who we are and this is what we can do for you.
Yeah. And now, Tracy, like you said previously, you worked at many other different places. Not that many. That's all right. Is there a lesson specifically that you've picked up from any of your previous workplaces that now you'd like to kind of instill here in the new environmental services division at Aplin? Is there there's one thing that you're like, you always make sure to kind of hammer home, whether it's the team, whether it's the outside clients, that you're like, this is something that I'll carry with me?
One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, and maybe it's just that the many years of experience that I have now, but I had a real lack of confidence in my knowledge, like, and now I realize I actually do know a lot of things.
I do actually know shit, yeah.
Like, especially being the more senior person, there is nobody that I can go talk to get advice from. I'm the one that people are coming to, and then I realize I really do know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not that I have the most experience as well, kind of in the engineering field, but knowing that people are taking advice from you and are following your word as well, it's almost a sense of like, not gratification, but it makes you feel good that, hey, by the way, here, like after the X amount of years that I've kind of been working and teaching myself and learning from others as well, that I'm now able to provide positive feedback and correct feedback, whether it's the clients or people around me as well, right?
Yeah, and I think about how I felt in my first role and how, my interactions with my supervisor and things that I liked, things that made me feel good about myself, things that didn't make me feel good about myself, and so it makes me more conscious of how at least I hope, deal with people that I'm working with.
Yeah, because self-projection, especially when you're dealing with clients. And not only that, but you're also dealing with a growing team as well. It's very important to project obviously correct information, but positive information into your team, right? I think it's like the discipline that we're in and the team that we're in, projecting positive attitude to everybody, because you want people to work with you and for you, right, at the same time. But if you're not able to give them the initial, as like say for a senior or a more person with more experience, why would they, you know what I mean? Why would they want to give it back to you or reciprocate it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, that experience level. It's almost like a spidey sense goes off in that, you'll be having a conversation with somebody and they will be telling you this story about a project and how it's going. And you're like, hold on, this isn't quite jiving in my brain anymore. Can we just back up and go step by step?
Yeah.
And that's that experience piece. Even though you don't have the details of it, there's just this moment in time as you're going through a conversation where you're like, there's something more that we need to explore.
And you're able to pull it from somewhere else.
And
right?
you're able to pull it and just say, slow down, hold on, let's talk about this step by step. I think there's something happening that you're not aware of. And let's have that collaboration. Let's have that mentoring moment, if that's what you want to call it. And that's the way I sort of see that experience coming forward now is really more of a spidey sense going off of, we just need to figure this out for a minute.
That's awesome. So now we'll steer it back to environmental services quickly for one more second. Tracy, you mentioned before that one of your biggest pet peeves was being called an environmentalist. Can we get into, I guess, the difference between providing environmental services from Aplin Martin and being an environmentalist? Not that there's wrong with either one of them.
So when people call me an environmentalist, I do correct them and say I'm an environmental professional or a biologist, because to me, an environment, like I picture tree hugger and protesters and extremists when I think of the word environmentalist.
Yeah.
So that is one of my biggest pet peeves.
And a lot of the time it comes with a negative connotation as well, being called an extreme environmentalist, right? Just because of the ever-evolving world, right?
Yeah, I think that environmentalist is a connotation of working outside of the regulatory structure, right? There's something whether what you're doing is right or wrong, they believe their personal bias is more important than what we may have in the system to protect the environment, where an environmental professionalist is working with you to ensure that you're complying with everything.
Yeah.
Ensure that you're meeting the essence of what is the regulatory structure, making sure that, if there's any impacts, you're finding mitigation solutions through it.
It's that thought that an environmentalist's mind is that development is bad and
save everything.
Yeah,
we can't put anything
and
there.
for me, it's about working with developers on their projects so that they are positive in an environmental way and helping them develop mitigations to make sure that it's done in a positive way for the environment.
I think that's the interesting point, is that we as human beings have impact on the earth. That is the reality of what we are.
Yep.
An environmental professional is creating a positive output even though we have an impact.
Working with the land we have.
Exactly. Where an environmentalist just believes that we are to do nothing.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point there, working with developers and with the environmental services. Now, I can imagine, I think I know the answer to this, but that there have probably been some difficult times working with developers and being able to provide, saying, hey, here's what's necessary in order to push this through. Can you speak a little bit on that, working with developers and working with clients to say, hey, I know it may not be the most exciting or it may not be something you want, but it is something that we need in order to get this approved?
I think for the most part nowadays, developers are very aware that the environmental issues, need to be dealt with appropriately and are willing to work collaboratively to come up with, solutions that work for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I see that as a positive.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think that the development industry understands the importance of the environment and that they want their projects to work not necessarily in harmony, but to seek out that balance.
Yeah.
They know that there needs to be balance moving forward, and it's our jobs to help them find creative solutions. I'm not going to say that all developers are cut from the same cloth. I think that there are those that get into the development industry because it looks lucrative.
Strictly to make a buck, yeah.
Yeah, not from a professional perspective. And yes, there's those that try and turn a blind eye. The reality is we give them solid information, coach them on the best way forward. If they choose to take a different path, that's on them.
Yeah. Okay. And now we have one question from our listeners from Azaday from our Young Professionals group. In a perfect world, what does the ideal teamwork look like between urban planners and environmental services?
So urban planners are sort of the gatherers of information, I'll say. We are the ones that bring together all of the layers that need to be considered while we're making decisions. And the environmental services needs to be one of those forefront layers that we consider. Understanding what is on the land is fundamental to being able to do any land development. And so it's one of the very early inputs in our collaborative process.
Awesome.
Got anything to add?
No, and Maggie said it perfectly.
Okay. I'll keep you there while you were laughing. Now I'll go back a little bit more and talk about some of the projects that both of you guys have worked on, whether together or separately. It could be with Aplin, could be from any of your previous endeavors. What is the project that you are most proud of to have worked on?
That's a tough one because there's been many.
Think about the one where at the bottom you're able to put produced by and in association with Maggie Koka.
Yeah, and again, I've had a variety of very successful projects in my 20 years. I think the one that comes to mind is the launching neighborhoods and getting those neighborhoods up and running. And so, you're working with the neighborhood plan and determining how it fits together. And so where this preamble is going is I worked on a project in South Surrey in North Grandview Heights. We went out and did the original site visit. And as we were stumbling through the bush, there was this big pond in the middle of the land that we had no idea where. Nobody knew it was there. Okay. It was a shock to everybody.
How big was the pond, out of curiosity?
It was about an acre.
Oh, wow.
It was a big chunk of land. The overall project was, I think, 50 acres in size.
Okay.
Right? So there's this acre pond in the middle of it. And so we worked through this. There was a cemetery to the north of it. They had been doing some work on their property, which had caused a stream to back up, which created this pond. So work through with the cemetery, with DFO, with the city of Surrey, with the client to be able to take that and turn it into what would become a stormwater management pond.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yes, it took some time, but we did succeed. and there's people living in that neighborhood. There's a whole walking trail now around it.
Oh, very cool.
Kids play in a park that's adjacent to it. Yeah. It actually turned into something quite interesting.
Awesome.
Oh, come on. You've got to have an exciting project.
I don't. Isn't this the question we said we were going to cross off because
No.
we couldn't
No,
answer it?
No, that one's coming.
Yeah. You can cut this all up.
No, you must have a project that you're proud of. What about flights? Because so much of there's so much survey work that gets done either from helicopter
Had
or
some
fixed wing.
crazy helicopter pilots. I had this pilot once. He
Grand Theft Auto or something.
he was a veteran and he flew like in wars and stuff. And I forget where we were going, but it was, I think, was it wintertime? We were coming up to this a big col, which is like kind of like a ridge with like, and the wind was coming over this ridge and like coming down, and the pilot could barely get
up and over it.
And I kept saying, I'm okay if this is too much and we need to turn back. Like,
we're just trying to get another day, maybe.
I'm okay. Like, if this is not a good thing to be doing. Yeah. And actually, I think we did end up turning around. But yeah, I've had some crazy pilots. Oh, one time we were up in Fort McMurray. We were doing some work for the oil sands monitoring a monitoring program, and we were doing collecting invertebrate samples on some of the water courses, and we would get the helicopter to sling we had like a tiny little Zodiac. Both of us barely fit in it, and so the helicopter would sling the boat and then take us and drop us off in the middle of nowhere. And I was with my coworker. I was piloting the boat, and we were going up, and we got to a spot where the river kind of narrowed, and so the water was a lot faster. And I remember looking at the shore, and because we were going upstream, and I remember looking, and like we weren't hardly moving. And he's sitting on the bow of the boat, and all of a sudden the water started coming over the bow of the boat, and I'm like, "Dada, get down! Like, get off the bow!" Because the boat was gonna like plow into the rapids. Yeah, I've done some pretty crazy stuff.
Okay, so now, sorry again to go back to other different types of stories, but I think we were chatting about this previously. But what was your welcome to consulting moment? Like, at what point in your young career where you're like, wow, I'm in the big leagues now. I'm dealing with big shots that are much higher than me, that have much more experience and a lot more money, that are looking to me now for my expertise to get this project rolling, kind of thing.
That's a tough one. Because again,
This is the one we crossed
off. It's a tough one because we've both been in the industry for a long time. So to think of that aha moment in our early careers.
25 years ago.
I'm not totally sure that I can think of exactly the aha moment. I think the one that sort of stands out for me, though, in early part of my career was we had a variety of projects that were all lining up to do public consultation in around the same time. And I had a week in which I had 4 public consultations for different projects. Yeah. And my boss came to me at the time and was like, "Are you okay? Like this is a lot. Like you're putting in 12-hour days trying to get through these consultations." And I was like, "I just line it up like ducks and stop thinking about it." Yeah. Right? I don't have time to worry about what is in front of me. I can only worry about what is next. Yeah. And I think that was sort of my aha moment of, okay, this is fast-paced. Yeah. This is...
It's a lot different than university when you were in school.
A lot different than university. And a lot different than any other job, right? Consulting has its own vibe to it, I would say.
And that's what I love about Aplin as well, is you almost get to touch everything, right? You're not just at the desk typing away sort of thing, right? Like, I'm sure when you started, you're like, "Oh, I don't think I'll be working until 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock. I don't know what time the consultations ended." But that sort of, you know what I mean? That sort of time frame where you're going above and beyond almost of what you probably originally signed up for.
Yeah, like I always knew urban planning, we sort of have this evening thing that goes on because we do public consultation. Yeah. But the reality is, they go into the evenings. You're always talking to these interesting people. You're always trying to explain why you got to the decision you did and why you're making this development proposal the way it is, and talking through the environmental piece of it, talking through, the city requirements that you have to meet, which quite frankly, nobody ever cares about. It's an interesting field to be in.
Oh, I've done a lot of cool things. I've done bowhead whale surveys over the Beaufort Sea, and I've done grizzly bear den surveys using FLIR to detect heat from a helicopter, which, when I think about it now, was pretty dangerous. Because we actually had to go down to the ground and go look for them. Yeah. You don't really want to wake up a denning grizzly bear.
At what point did you ever spot any, or?
No, I don't think we ever found one. Okay. But I've been...
Thankfully.
I've been chased by a grizzly bear. I was in the bush with a coworker, and we came around the corner of some trees, and this bear was coming at me full charge. Yeah. And I said, "Grizzly," and she turned and ran. I mean, we all took the, bear awareness training, or they tell you don't run, and she turned and ran, and I said, don't run. But I don't think the bear could see her because she hadn't, thankfully, come around the corner yet.
I think that would definitely constitute a welcome to, I wouldn't say maybe not consulting, but welcome to the working world.
Yeah, I mean, sure did get our blood pumping. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about that. Like that was That's one of the things that will stand out in my mind forever, and I will never forget that moment. I can still see when it was charging. I can see its fur rippling and the sun shining on it. Like I could picture it in my mind, and I will never forget that moment.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm happy that I've never been chased by a bear. I've spent a lot of time outdoors. I've never been chased by a bear.
Yeah. Luckily, it was just a bluff charge and it stopped, but it did follow us when we were trying to get back to our truck because we were crashing and bashing through the bush. And I was actually amazed how an animal that big can be so quiet going through the bush because we were booking it back to our truck and I heard one branch snap and I looked and I saw a flash of brown through the trees and it was paralleling us.
From an equipment, safety, something that you've learned through your career now.
I think starting out as a junior, you're like, oh, I want to do this job. I want to do a good job. But one of the things that's stuck in my mind about safety is the right to refuse work. If you don't feel safe, you have the right to refuse work.
Right.
And I know as a junior person, you don't feel.
Yeah, it's important because
you don't know if you have like the expertise or the knowledge level because you're like, if someone above me is saying, oh, we should do this or we can do this, you're like, well, maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've definitely done, not necessarily as an environmental consultant, because I'm not, but been the buddy person, because there's always two people in the field. So it's a classic rule. So I've always been the second person that's gone out and been very appreciative of the fact that I'm with people that are very skilled, right? They're like, slow down, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? Getting in and out of helicopters, making sure, when we went and retrieved that collar, caribou are naturally inquisitive, and so they started walking right up to us. It was like, you're a really big animal.
Maybe, yes.
Just stay over there.
Yeah. I remember telling that story right after it happened, the one on the river where we were, where the boat was almost going underwater. And I remember there was a senior person at the company, and we kind of got in trouble and she's like, we are not running an outdoor adventure company here. Like, this is
whitewater rafting.
Basically, you guys shouldn't have been doing that. Like,
just one more question now on environmental services, and as it's kind of growing at Aplin and the awareness and everything, all that is growing worldwide. Where do you see this division and team in the future for Aplin? What is your ultimate vision?
So I think the immediate vision is servicing our current clients. The long-term vision is providing environmental services to clients that may not be traditional Aplin clients. I think about environmental assessments, doing corridor work, whether that's gas line, hydro, highways. They're, even as far as going and doing ocean work. I think that that's completely outside of what we typically do. I don't want our environmental division to be restricted to land development. I think that we can open that door to a variety of environmental services.
Awesome. Is there something that, Tracy, as well, that you would envision, or is there something that you've been thinking about that you'd love to implement kind of under your name as well, environmental services wise?
No, I'm happy doing the stuff that I'm doing now that I know really well.
Yeah.
We chatted about it this morning, and she's like, ocean? No, I don't want to do ocean work.
Bears? No, I think I'd be on that now. Yeah, okay. Been there and done that. Awesome. So I guess we'll close with this one. Maggie, I'll start with you. What part of Aplin makes you keep coming back day after day after day?
Well, I sort of shyly admit that I've been with a company for close to 20 years. I find that shocking. Like, if I think about my younger self, I never thought that I would be one of those individuals that has a lifetime with one employer.
Yeah.
And I think what keeps me here is the ability to craft my own destiny. Develop my own portfolio, work with the clients that I enjoy working with, take on interesting different projects. Mm-hmm. I think that I love project management from a perspective of start and there's a finish. You actually see something happen. And so, I think that's what keeps me coming back day after day.
Yeah, and I think something kind of that I admire about you as I was reading. I've been with Aplin over 7 years as well, right? So to know that where we are, we have so many employers and people at the company that have been with us for so long, right?
Which is a good sign to somebody that's just starting out with the company that, it, you know, it must be a good company to work for, that people stick around for that long.
Yeah. So I'll phrase it a little bit different for you, Tracy. What makes you coming back to the environmental services field?
Well, it's definitely not when I sit at my desk and type away at my computer. When I was out in the field yesterday, it was a beautiful day. I was walking around in Kanaka Creek Park, and you know, I just kept saying to myself, and actually I was saying it out loud too, and the client's like, "Oh, you must just love this." I'm like, "Oh, how can you tell?"
Yeah.
You know, just getting outside and
kind of having an almost new sense of adventure every single day, where it's not you're able to change it up as well.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for this. It's been a blast. I think that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank Maggie and Tracy again for your contributions and for sharing your experience, environmental services with Aplin as well, previous as well. Thank you to the listeners as well, and stay tuned for our next episode, and have a great day.